Welcome back. It's Wednesday. I did wake up like 6 a.m. in the morning and I made some video this morning. It's only 9 a.m. I think I'd like to start reading because it will be the sun is shining. So we have another hot day. Later the temperature will get up to like 30. So let's close my door and reading a bit before the temperature gets up. No, that will be like 27 degrees later today. Even it's autumn. Is September, 1st September. I saw on the news, but now they have removed it because the Danish government have a meeting. The Danish government have a new meeting. No, the Danish government have a government meeting at 12:30 with new ministers. We have a press meeting I like to watch, but that's in 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So let's read this. I have it on my read list. My read list here. Pac-Man. So let's read it. I need half a minute to get to my bed. So I think I should just relax today and get a shaving and a shower. And then cook hot foods later.
Pac-Man. This article is about the video game. For the character, see Pac-Man, character. For the series of games, see list of Pac-Man video games. For other uses, see Pac-Man, disambiguation. Pac-Man, originally called Pac-Man in Japan, is a 1980 maze video game developed and released by Namco for arcades. In North America, the game was released by Midway Manufacturing as part of its licensing agreement with Namco America. The player controls Pac-Man, who must eat all the dots inside an enclosed maze while avoiding 4 colored ghosts. Eating large flashing dots called power pellets causes the ghosts to temporarily turn blue, allowing Pac-Man to eat them for bonus points. Game development began in early 1979. Directed by Toru Iwatani with a 9-man team. Iwatani wanted to create a game that could appeal to women as well as men, because most video games of the time had themes of war or sports. Although the inspiration for the Pac-Man character was the image of a pizza with a slice removed, Iwatani has said he rounded out the Japanese character for mouth, kuchi, Japanese. The in-game characters were made to be cute and colorful to appeal to younger players. The original Japanese title of Pac-Man was derived from the Japanese phrase paku paku tabu, which refers to gobbling something up. The title was changed to Pac-Man for the North American release. Pac-Man was a widespread critical and commercial success, leading to several sequels, merchandise, and 2 television series, as well as a hit single, Pac-Man Fever, by Buckner and Garcia. The character of Pac-Man has become the official mascot of Bandai Namco Entertainment. The game remains one of the highest-grossing and best-selling games, generating more than $14 billion in revenue, as of 2016, and 43 million units in sales combined. and has an enduring commercial and cultural legacy, commonly listed as one of the greatest video games of all time. Gameplay. In-game screenshot. The ghosts are in the center with Pac-Man below them. At bottom left is the player's life count, and at bottom right the level icon, in this case a cherry. At top is the player's score. Pac-Man is an action maze chase video game. The player controls the eponymous character through an enclosed maze. The objective of the game is to eat all of the dots placed in the maze while avoiding 4 colored ghosts: Blinky, red, Pinky, pink, Inky, cyan, and Clyde, orange, who pursue Pac-Man. When Pac-Man eats all of the dots, the player advances to the next level. Levels are indicated by fruit icons at the bottom of the screen. In between levels are short cushions featuring Pac-Man and Blinky in humorous, comical situations. If Pac-Man is caught by a ghost, he loses a life. The game ends when all lives are lost. Each of the 4 ghosts has its own unique artificial intelligence, AI, or personality. Blinky gives direct chase to Pac-Man. Pinky and Inky try to position themselves in front of Pac-Man, usually by cornering him, and Clyde switches between chasing Pac-Man and fleeing from him. Placed near the 4 corners of the maze are large flashing energizers or power pellets. When Pac-Man eats one, the ghosts turn blue with a dizzy expression and reverse direction. Pac-Man can eat blue ghosts for bonus points. When a ghost is eaten, its eyes make their way back to the center box in the maze, where the ghost regenerates and resumes its normal activity. Eating multiple blue ghosts in succession increases their point value. After a certain amount of time, blue-colored ghosts flash white before turning back into their normal forms. Eating a certain number of dots in a level causes a bonus item, usually a fruit, to appear underneath the center box. The item can be eaten for bonus points. To the sides of the maze are 2 warp tunnels, which allow Pac-Man and the ghosts to travel to the opposite side of the screen. Ghosts become slower when entering and exiting these tunnels. The game increases in difficulty as the player progresses. The ghosts become faster, and the energizer's effect decreases in duration, eventually disappearing entirely. An integer overflow causes the 256th level to load improperly, rendering it impossible to complete. This is known as a kill screen. Development. After acquiring the struggling Japanese division of Atari in 1974, video game developer Namco began producing its own video games in-house, as opposed to licensing them from other developers and distributing them in Japan. Company president Masaya Nakamura created a small video game development group within the company and ordered them to study several NEC-produced microcomputers to potentially create games with. One of the first people assigned to this division was a 24-year-old employee named Toru Iwatani. He created Namco's first video game GB in 1978, which while unsuccessful helped the company gain a stronger foothold in the quickly growing video game industry. He assisted in the production of 2 sequels, Bomb B and QTQ, both released in 1979. The Japanese video game industry had surged in popularity with games such as Space Invaders and Breakout, which led to the market being flooded with similar titles from other manufacturers in an attempt to cash in on the success. Iwatani felt that arcade games only appealed to men for their crude graphics and violence, and that arcades in general were seen as seedy environments. For his next project, Iwatani chose to create a non-violent, cheerful video game that appealed mostly to women, as he believed that attracting women and couples into arcades would potentially make them appear to be much more family-friendly in tone. Iwatani began thinking of things that women liked to do in their time. He decided to center his game around eating, basing this on women liking to eat desserts and other sweets. His game was initially called Pac-Man, based on the Japanese onomatopoeia term paku paku tabuyu, referencing the mouth movement of opening and closing in succession. The game that later became Pac-Man began development in early 1979 and took a year and 5 months to complete, the longest for a video game up to that point. Iftani enlisted the help of 9 other Namco employees to assist in production, including composer Toshio Kai, programmer Shigeo Funeki, and hardware engineer Shigechi Ishimura. Care was taken to make the game appeal to a non-violent audience, particularly women, with its usage of simple gameplay and cute, attractive character designs. When the game was being developed, Namco was underway with designing Galaxian, which used a then revolutionary RGB color display, allowing sprites to use several colors at once instead of using colored strips of cellophane that was commonplace at the time. This technological accomplishment allowed Iftani to greatly enhance his game with bright pastel colors, which he felt would help attract players. The idea for Energizers was a concept Iftani borrowed from Popeye the Sailor, a cartoon character that temporarily acquires superhuman strength after eating a can of spinach. It is believed that Iftani was partly inspired by a Japanese children's story about a creature that protected children from monsters by devouring them. Frank Foglerman, the co-founder of Gremlin Industries, believes that the maze chase gameplay of Pac-Man was inspired by Sega's Head-On, 1979, a similar arcade game that was popular in Japan. Iftani has often claimed that the character of Pac-Man was designed after the shape of a pizza with a missing slice while he was at lunch. In a 1986 interview he said that this was only half true, and that the Pac-Man character was also based on him rounding out and simplifying the Japanese character Kuchi, meaning mouth. The 4 ghosts were made to be cute, colorful and appealing, using bright, pastel colors and expressive blue eyes. Iftani had used this idea before in QTQ, which features similar ghost-like characters, and decided to incorporate it into Pac-Man. He was inspired by the television series Casper the Friendly Ghost and the manga Abake no Kyutaro. Ghosts were chosen as the game's main antagonists because they were used as villainous characters in animation. The idea for the fruit bonuses was based on graphics displayed on slot machines, which often use symbols such as cherries and bells. Originally, Namco President Masaya Nakamura had requested that all of the ghosts be red and thus indistinguishable from one another. Iftani believed that the ghosts should be different colors, and he received unanimous support from his colleagues for this idea. The ghosts were programmed to have their own distinct personalities, so as to keep the game from becoming too boring or impossibly difficult to play. Each ghost's name gives a hint to its strategy for tracking down Pac-Man. Shadow, Blinky, always chases Pac-Man. Speedy, Pinky, tries to get ahead of him. Bashful, Inky, uses a more complicated strategy to zero in on him. And Pokey, Clyde, alternates between chasing him and running away. The ghosts' Japanese names are Chase, Ambush, Fickle, and Playing Dumb, respectively. To break up the tension of constantly being pursued, humorous intermissions between Pac-Man and Blinky were added. The sound effects were among the last things added to the game, created by Toshio Kai. In a design session, Iftani noisily ate fruit and made gurgling noises to describe to Kai how he wanted the eating effect to sound. Upon completion, the game was titled Pac-Man, based on the working title and the titular character's distinct hockey puck-like shape. Release. Location testing for Pac-Man began on the 22nd of May 1980, in Shibuya, Tokyo. Non-gamers responded well to it, finding it easy to learn, while arcade regulars were not impressed. A private showing for the game was done in June, followed by a nationwide release in July. Eyeing the game's success in Japan, Namco initialized plans to bring the game to the international market, particularly the United States. Before showing the game to distributors, Namco America made a number of changes, such as altering the names of the ghosts. The biggest of these was the game's title. Executives at Namco were worried that vandals would change the P in Pac-Man to an F, forming Fuck-Man. Masaya Nakamura chose to rename it to Pac-Man, as he felt it was closer to the game's original Japanese title of Pac-Man. After Pac-Man was ruled out but before Pac-Man was decided upon, early English promotional material used the name Snapper. In Europe, the game was released under both titles, Pac-Man and Pac-Man. When Namco presented Pac-Man and Rally X to potential distributors at the 1980 AMOA trade show in November, executives believed that Rally X would be the best-selling game of that year. According to Playmeter magazine, both Pac-Man and Rally X received mild attention at the show. Namco had initially approached Atari to distribute Pac-Man, but Atari refused the offer. Midway Manufacturing subsequently agreed to distribute both Pac-Man and Rally X in North America, announcing their acquisition of the manufacturing rights on the 22nd of November and releasing them in December. Ports. Pac-Man was ported to several home video game systems and personal computers. The most infamous of these is the 1982 Atari 2600 conversion, designed by Todd Fry and published by Atari, Incorporated. This version of the game was widely criticized for its inaccurate portrayal of the arcade version and for its peculiar design choices, most notably the flickering effect of the ghosts. However, it was a commercial success, selling over 7 million copies. Atari released versions for the Intellivision, VIC-20, Commodore 64, Apple II, IBM PC compatibles, T99/4, ZX Spectrum, and the Atari 8-bit computers. A port for the Atari 5200 was released in 1983, a version that is considered as a significant improvement over the Atari 2600 version. Namco released a version for the Nintendo Famicom in 1984 as one of the console's first third-party titles, as well as a port for the MSX computer. The Famicom version was later released in North America for the Nintendo Entertainment System by Tengen, a subsidiary of Atari Games. Tengen produced an unlicensed version of the game in a black cartridge shell, released during a time when Tengen and Nintendo were in disagreements over the latter's stance on quality control for its consoles. This version was re-released by Namco as an official title in 1993. Featuring a new cartridge label and box. The Famicom version was released for the Famicom Disk System in 1990 as a budget title for the disc writer kiosks in retail stores. The same year, Namco released a port of Pac-Man for the Game Boy, which allowed for two-player cooperative play via the Game Link cable peripheral. A version for the Game Gear was released a year later, which likewise enabled support for multiplayer. In celebration of the game's 20th anniversary in 1999, Namco re-released the Game Boy version for the Game Boy Color, bundled with Pac Attack and titled Pac-Man, Special Color Edition. The same year, Namco and SNK co-published a port for the Neo Geo Pocket Color, which came with a circular cross ring that attached to the D-pad to restrict it to four-directional movement. In 2001, Namco released a port of Pac-Man for various Japanese mobile phones, being one of the company's first mobile game releases. The Famicom version of the game was re-released for the Game Boy Advance in 2004 as part of the Famicom mini-series, released to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Famicom. This version was released in North America and Europe under the Classic NES series label. Namco Networks released Pac-Man for Brew mobile devices in 2005. The arcade original was released for the Xbox Live Arcade service in 2006, featuring achievements and online leaderboards. In 2009 a version for iOS devices was published. This release was rebranded as Pac-Man and Tournaments in 2013, featuring new mazes and leaderboards. The NES version was released for the Wii Virtual Console in 2007. A Roku version was released in 2011, alongside a port of the Game Boy release for the 3DS Virtual Console. Pac-Man was one of 4 titles released under the Arcade Game Series brand, which was published for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and PC in 2016. In 2021, according to Nintendo Direct, it was announced that Hamster Corporation would release Pac-Man, along with Xevious, for the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 as part of its Arcade Archives series, marking the first 2 Namco games to be included as part of the series. Pac-Man is included in many Namco compilations, including Namco Museum Volume 1, 1995, Namco Museum 64, 1999, Namco Museum Battle Collection, 2005, Namco Museum DS, 2007, Namco Museum Essentials, 2009, and Namco Museum Megamix, 2010. In 1996, it was re-released for arcades as part of Namco Classic Collection Volume 2, alongside Dig Dug, Rally X and special arrangement remakes of all 3 titles. Microsoft included Pac-Man in Microsoft Return of Arcade, 1995, as a way to help attract video game companies to its Windows 95 operating system. Namco released the game in the 3rd volume of Namco History in Japan in 1998. The 2001 Game Boy Advance compilation Pac-Man Collection compiles Pac-Man, Pac-Mania, Pac-Attack and Pac-Man arrangement onto one cartridge. Pac-Man is a hidden extra in the arcade game Miss Pac-Man / Galaga, class of 1981, 2001. A similar cabinet was released in 2005 that featured Pac-Man as the centerpiece. Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, 1993, and Pac-Man World 2, 2002, have Pac-Man as an unlockable extra. Alongside the Xbox 360 remake Pac-Man Championship Edition, it was ported to the Nintendo 3DS in 2012 as part of Pac-Man and Galaga Dimensions. The 2010 Wii game Pac-Man Party and its 2011 3DS remake include Pac-Man as a bonus game, alongside the arcade versions of Dig Dug and Galaga. In 2014, Pac-Man was included in the compilation title Pac-Man Museum for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC, alongside several other Pac-Man games. The NES version is one of 30 games included in the NES Classic Edition. Reception. Upon its North American debut at AMOA 1980, the game initially received a mild response. Playmeter magazine previewed the game and called it a cute game which appears to grow on players, something which cute games are not prone to do, saying that there's more to the game than at first appears, but criticized the sound as a drawback, saying it is good for a while, then becomes annoying. Upon release, the game exceeded expectations with wide critical and commercial success. Commercial performance. When it was first released in Japan, Pac-Man was initially only a modest success. Namco's own Galaxian, 1979, had quickly outdone the game in popularity because its predominantly male player base was familiar with its shooting gameplay as opposed to Pac-Man's cute characters and maze chase theme. Pac-Man eventually became very successful in Japan, where it went on to be Japan's highest-grossing arcade game of 1980 according to the annual Game Machine charts, dethroning Space Invaders, 1978, which had topped the annual charts for 2 years in a row and leading to a shift in the Japanese market away from space shooters towards action games featuring comical characters. Pac-Man was Japan's fourth highest grossing arcade game of 1981. In North America, Midway had limited expectations prior to release, initially manufacturing 5,000 units for the US, before it caught on upon release there. Some arcades purchased entire rows of Pac-Man cabinets. It became a nationwide success. Upon release in 1980, it was earning about $8.1 million per week in the United States. Within 1 year, more than 100,000 arcade units had been sold, which grossed more than $1 billion in quarters. It overtook Atari's Asteroids, 1979, as the best-selling arcade game in the country, and surpassed the film Star Wars: A New Hope, 1977, with more than $1 billion in revenue. Pac-Man was the United States' highest-grossing arcade game of 1981, and second highest game of 1982. By 1982, it was estimated to have had 30 million active players across the United States. The game's success was partly driven by its popularity among female audiences, becoming the first commercial video game to involve large numbers of women as players according to Midway's Stan Jarocki, with Pac-Man being the favorite coin-op game among female gamers through 1982. Among the 9 arcade games covered by How to Win Video Games, 1982, Pac-Man was the only one with females accounting for a majority of players. The number of arcade units sold had tripled to 400,000 by 1982, receiving an estimated total of between 7 billion coins and $6 billion. In a 1983 interview, Nakamura said that though he did expect Pac-Man to be successful, I never thought it would be this big. Pac-Man is the best-selling arcade game of all time, with total estimated earnings ranging from 10 billion coins and $3.5 billion, $7.7 billion adjusted for inflation, to $6 billion, $19 billion adjusted for inflation, in arcades. Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man also topped the US Replay Cocktail arcade cabinet charts for 23 months, from February 1982 through 1983 up until February 1984. The Atari 2600 version of the game sold over 8 million copies, making it the console's best-selling title. In addition, Coleco's tabletop mini-arcade unit sold over 1.5 million units in 1982. The Pac-Man Nelsonic Game Watch sold more than 500,000 units the same year. The Family Computer, Famicom, version and its 2004 Game Boy Advance re-release sold a combined 598,000 copies in Japan. The Atari 5200 version sold 35,011 cartridges between 1986 and 1988. The Atari 8-bit computer version sold 42,359 copies in 1986 and 1990. Thunder Mountain's 1986 budget release for home computers received a diamond certification from the Software Publishers Association in 1989 for selling over 500,000 copies, and mobile phone ports have sold over 30 million paid downloads as of 2010. 2 Computing also listed the Atari Softport 10th on the magazine's list of top Apple II games as of late 1985, based on sales and market share data. As of 2016, all versions of Pac-Man are estimated to have grossed a total of more than $12 billion in revenue. Accolades. Pac-Man was awarded Best Commercial Arcade Game at the 1982 Arcade Awards. Pac-Man also won the Video Software Dealers Association's VSDA Award for Best Video Game. In 2001, Pac-Man was voted the greatest video game of all time by a Dixon's poll in the UK. The killer list of video games listed Pac-Man as the most popular game of all time. The list aggregator site Play.com currently ranks Pac-Man as the #53 road top game of all time and game of the year. Impact. Pac-Man is considered by many to be one of the most influential video games of all time. The game established the maze chase game genre, was the first